Muito obrigado, Presidente. Queria cumprimentar.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I'd like to welcome the Secretary General, welcome all the other colleagues here to this meeting this afternoon. Maybe I could just point out the following. I think I can be extremely brief. I'm not going to need a great deal of time, and certainly not the amount of time that you've been so generous as to give me. In the current phase of budgetary negotiations, maybe I can make it clear to everybody that we have a preliminary draft budget for the coming year, 2021, but that is not a Bureau proposal. So, according to our procedure, we have a preliminary draft coming from the Secretary General. There's been an initial exchange of views on that draft at the level of the Bureau, but the Bureau will adopt this preliminary draft on the 9th of March. In doing this, we will also take into consideration what will crop up through the process of this exchange of views here today in the Budget Committee. And that is basically what I want to underscore for you here today. I'd just like to be present to hear you discuss this so that I can take on board the concerns that you have when this discussion then goes back to the Bureau, where the preliminary draft estimates will once again be discussed. So your contributions are extremely important for the Bureau of Parliament. After those preliminary remarks, I'd like to say the following, just taking into consideration what was actually said in the first exchange of views in the Bureau. The Secretary General's draft, as I'm sure you're aware, involves an increase in the overall Parliament budget of 3.5%. And this change shows that we're not asking for a great deal, but we are under the obligation to look at the needs of Parliament, the requirements of Parliament, and then we need to take a decision in that light. Now, is this request going beyond what we need, or is it actually a shortfall compared with what we need? The Bureau has already noted the following on this. The preliminary draft estimates fall in line with previous decisions that the European Parliament has taken, which of course were supported by the Bureau. And there are a range of priorities that have been established which are considered appropriate with a view to the task that we have to complete. The main increases covered in the preliminary draft estimates of this budget concern the working conditions in the European Parliament. It comes down to IT, hardware, and furniture provision. Then studies and information provision, so support for the members and their staff in the parliamentary work, so that's to the tune of about 15%. But we shouldn't just concentrate on the changes. I think we need to look at the main overall investment that is being carried out, where the heavy lifting is being done. And here you can see there's investment being carried out in areas where previous decisions have been taken to allow that. There's a considerable investment, once again, in buildings and security. That's already been mentioned, especially the Adenauer building in Luxembourg, but also the building in Brussels. And then additional expenditure You've got the TAIG building in Brussels and the visitors centre in Brussels and in Strasbourg. My second comment. When we're looking at the budget for next year, we are also looking at a lot of investment being made in information and communication technologies. Again, these decisions flow from previous decisions taken by the Parliament in extending this Europa Experiences and the mobile parliamentarium as well. Then there's information and awareness raising campaigns that have been planned on European democracy. So these are important plans, I think. I would, in fact, go as far as to say, considering the current challenges we have, these measures are absolutely essential. Also, we're going to be investing in cyber security. 11.3 million euros are to be spent on computer security, and this is something that is becoming more and more important in the everyday activities of the European Parliament. In an internal audit, it's been pointed out that there are weaknesses in our cybersecurity, so it is necessary to make sure that the European Parliament's capacities in this realm be improved. So investments in communication and cybersecurity, those are political priorities that are reflected in the budget. I believe this chimes with what has already been said in previous debates on this issue. To conclude, there are a few other points I'd like to touch on that the Bureau mentioned in its discussions. Of course, in the final version of the preliminary draft budget, it would be good if this were reflected. First of all, bolstering our capacities for interpretation and translation. The interpreters need to be supported in their work so that they can meet our expectations in the sort of service we want. Also, there's been a request to check the extent to which resources for parliamentary assistance could take into account any changes accruing following on from Brexit, which means teams might be able to be changed around or bolstered to support the work of individual members. In Brussels, as a location for Parliament, perhaps there'd be a more appropriate solution that could be found. And once again, on cybersecurity, I mentioned earlier that this is a genuine priority. Despite the financial firepower included in the preliminary draft estimates, we think that it might be worthwhile checking this just to make sure that our expectations are fully taken into account.